Thank you once again for joining me on CrunchEconometrix. My name is Ngozi Adeleye. Today's video, we will be looking at the canonical difference in differences technique. So if you're an undergraduate, master student, PhD candidate, or a researcher, and you're working on your dissertation or writing a manuscript on difference in differences technique, you need to watch this video. So good to have you guys on board. So we are going to consider, why do parallel trends matter after all in your research? Talking about the canonical difference in differences approach. This is going to be a 4-part series. So this is part 1, where we look at the background of the story. We establish the theoretical framework. We establish the problem statement, look at the research question, look at the objective and the hypothesis we want to test. I'm going to show you the empirical model, the data set variables we are using, and the articles I will be recommending for you guys for further reading. Now, why do you need the difference in differences technique? In case you're trying to estimate the causal impact of a policy, perhaps a marketing campaign or a legal change, you just cannot compare groups before and after, simply because correlation is not causation. Now, like I said, this is going to be a 4-part series on canonical difference in differences approach. And we are completely revamping how we're going to look at what we call causal inferences. We are bringing together the classic power of Stata and the modern open source flexibility of R to master the DID technique. In other words, I will be doing live estimations using both R and Stata software. In this first video, we will break down the core theory of the critical parallel trends assumption, our empirical model specification, and I'm going to show you the famous real-world data set we will be using. So let's establish the problem statement for DID. Now, you want to know if raising the minimum wage will cause unemployment. If we look at just one state before and after a wage increase, that is considering macro shocks, for instance, like national recession or a boom, that will likely bias our results. Also, if we look at two states at the same time, just comparing their structural differences, like differences in tax systems or urbanization, that may also bias our results. So what's the story behind DID analysis? Like I always tell students, imagine a natural experiment where an invisible wall splits a homogeneous labor market into two. In this example, on one side we have New Jersey, where the government forces wages to go up. On the other side of the wall is Pennsylvania, where the wage stays the same. Now let's capitalize on the intuition for DID analysis by subtracting the baseline change over time in Pennsylvania from the change over time in New Jersey. The pure causal impact of the policy is therefore isolated. Like I said, Pennsylvania is the proxy for the counterfactual. That is, what would have happened to New Jersey if it had never raised its minimum wage? Let's take a moment to unpack this conceptual framework. It speaks a lot as to why we need the DID approach. Now, imagine a state that changes its minimum wage law. If you only look at employment in that state before, which is the before policy quadrant, and after the law, you might mistake a general economic boom for the effect of that policy. So in this quadrant, you can see the treatment group, which is New Jersey before the policy, and you can see the control group, which is Pennsylvania before the policy. Now, on the upper right of the quadrant, we have the treatment group New Jersey after the policy, and below quadrant on the lower right, we're going to see the control group after the policy. Again, the golden rule of DID is the parallel trend assumption. It states that in the absence of the treatment, the difference between treatments and control groups will have remained constant over time. Don't forget, New Jersey is the treatment group and the control group is Pennsylvania. Look at this graph. We don't require the two groups to have the same exact starting point, okay? What we require is that their trajectories are parallel before the policy hits. If this assumption fails, then our causal estimates are biased. I'm going to show you in part 3 how to exactly run this diagnosis text and to check if this assumption will hold in this data. Now let's look at the DID formula, okay? The formula simply tells you treatment after minus treatment before, the first bracket, minus control after minus control before. So we have two sets of differences. So let's unpack this. The first difference, what does that tell you? It tells you how much did treatment change. So that will be the change in treatment, okay? Treatment after minus treatment before. So this entire section stands for treatment before. The second batch of difference is the time for control, which is the control group, C minus B. That is, how much did control change without policy? So change in control simply is C minus B. So now what is the formula for the difference in differences? By removing the common time trend, this is what we're going to have. Change in treatments minus change in control. Now, the last subtraction removes what would have happened to New Jersey without the minimum wage hike. And that's the counterfactual gap shown in the parallel trends chart, which is this. This is it, okay? That's the gap we are seeing right there. In the Card-Krueger example, New Jersey before the policy had 20.1 employees, and after the policy had 21 employees. So there's a growth of 0.9. Pennsylvania before the policy had 23.4. After the policy, that went down to 21.2, giving us a deduction of negative 2.2. In total, the DID showed an increase in number of employees by 3.1. In other words, from the Card-Krueger experiment, the minimum wage did not reduce employment. Look at the orange gap at time 8. It illustrates the average treatment effect on the treated. So in this counterfactual chart, it's showing the gap. So in the Card-Krueger data or experiment, the gap was about increase in 3 employees, meaning that the minimum wage did not reduce jobs. So let's take a look at our research objective and hypothesis. So in this video series, the objective will be to evaluate the causal impact of statutory minimum wage increase on low-wage employment levels within the fast food industry. So what will be the null hypothesis being tested? We are testing that minimum wage increase does not have any causal effects on full-time equivalent employment. Alternative hypothesis in this case will be that the minimum wage increase significantly alters full-time equivalent employment. So if you're having a dissertation or a manuscript similar to this, you can easily just adapt this objective and null hypothesis to your research. So this is the model specification where we have the change in full-time employment as a dependent variable. We have our intersect beta naught. We have the state variable, which is a binary treatment indicator, equal to 1 if the restaurant is on the treatment state, which is New Jersey, and 0 if it's in a control state, which is Pennsylvania. Then we have chain. Chain in this specification is a categorical dummy variable that we are controlling for, which represents certain brand fixed effects for franchise-specific corporate structures. And again, we have what we see as the stochastic error term. So this is the model specification. For Stata users, this is a variable. Let me go to Stata and show you what we have. So Stata users, this is what we have in our data editor. The data is available on GitHub. CrunchEconometrix GitHub is available free of charge. So make sure you get to my GitHub, download this data so that you can follow the video tutorials. So this is for Stata users. For R users, let me show you the data from the R Studio. So this is R Studio, and this is the data we are using, as you can see right here. So for R users, this is the data we'll be using. As you can see in R Studio, comprehensive is also available in Excel form. All you need to do is just import it into R Studio. Now let's examine the power of difference in differences. It's applicable to all facets of research. It doesn't matter whether you are in social research, life sciences, any sphere of research, you can actually adapt the DID techniques. I'm going to show you 5 concrete real-world examples that DID can be used. Let's look at health economics. Example, insurance expansion. So what is the policy? A country or state decides to expand free public health insurance coverage to low-income adults. Treatment group in this case would be the states that opted into the insurance expansion program. The control group would be a neighboring state with similar demographics but rejected the expansion. The outcome variable in this case can be the annual hospital emergency room readmission rates or preventive health checkup rates. So what would be the causal question in this instance? It will be, does expanding health insurance reduce the financial burden on emergency rooms by shifting patients toward preventive primary care? So if you're in health economics or embarking on any health-related research, you can consider doing a DID technique. Let's look at financial economics and see how applicable DID is. Let's look at corporate governance reform. What's the policy? A stock exchange passes a strict new regulatory law, forcing publicly traded companies to have at least 30% independent directors on their boards. What would be the treatment group? That would be firms listed on that specific stock exchange, subject to the new law. Control group, those would be the highly similar private firms or firms listed on the foreign exchange not subject to the rule. What would be the outcome variable? That would be your firm performance metrics, for instance, ROA or Tobin scale. The causal question, you can frame it thus. Does increasing board independence reduce agency cost and directly improve corporate financial performance? So financial economics, there you have a DID study. Use it, adapt it for your thesis, adapt it for your research. Are you in agroeconomics or agricultural economics? Let's look at drought-resistant seed subsidy program. The policy, we have a regional government that provides a 50% cash subsidy on the purchase of advanced genetically modified drought-resistant maize seeds. Okay? So what will be the treatment group? We have farmers located within the administrative boundary that are eligible for the subsidy. Control group, this will be farmers in the adjacent border region just outside the administrative line who will pay full price. Outcome variable in this example can be the total crop yield per hectare or agricultural household net income during a dry season. You can frame your causal question this way. Do input subsidies for climate-resistant technologies successfully protect smallholder farm incomes against weather shocks? So agroeconomics, there you have a DID study that you can use. For ICT-related studies, we can have a rural broadband infrastructure subsidy, okay? So what's the policy? We have a national government rolling out 5G fiber optic broadband infrastructure grants that is exclusive only to remote mountain communities. So what would be the treatment group in this example? Villages that receive the government-funded broadband infrastructure installation, and the control group will be socio-economically similar rural group located in plains or valleys that do not qualify for the remote area grants. And the outcome variable in this example can be the local small business revenue growth or youth employment rates. Okay? Now, you can frame your causal question this way. Does bridging the digital divide through physical infrastructure investments stimulate rural economic growth and entrepreneurship? So if you are doing any ICT related study, I've given you an idea on how you can introduce the DID approach. Finally, let's consider environmental economics, where we are looking at congestion pricing zones. What would be the policy in this case? A major metropolitan city introducing a strict congestion charge, which is a daily financial fee for any fossil fuel vehicle driving into the city center. What would be the treatment group? This would be the urban neighborhoods inside the designated toll boundary. Control group, that would be the demographically identical urban neighborhoods located just outside the toll zone boundary. Your outcome variable in this example, you can consider early ambient fine particle matter, air pollution concentrations, or childhood asthma hospital visits as your outcome variable. You can also frame your causal question this way. Does placing a direct price on vehicular carbon emissions improve local public health outcomes by reducing localized air pollution? For essential reading, as you can see on the screen, I've listed the resources I'm going to recommend to support these video tutorials. Again, this is a link to my CrunchEconometrix GitHub account where I have uploaded all the resources I'll be using for the Canonical DiD video lectures. Free of charge, I have Stata software, I have R software, the codes are there, data set is there. Get across to my GitHub, download these files, and follow this video lecture. We're moving on to part 2 in the next video. Please don't go away. Now that our model is specified, stay with me as we move straight to the next part where I'm going to explore the data set using both Stata and R code live. Thank you so much for staying with me. I really appreciate. If you are yet to subscribe to CrunchEconometrix YouTube channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. Click the subscribe button and please follow. I also appreciate if you share this content with your colleagues, your student community, your academic community. Give me a like and give me this video and I'll be right back. Thank you. Don't go away.